Well, we've broken down the top 16 seeds, and now it's time to dive into the sub-regionals, leading in to Wednesday's round one extravaganza. We're going to start with the Wisconsin sub-regional, the first match on the bracket, and that's Bowling Green State against Weber State. And I'm joined by the voice of the Falcons, Zach Smith. Zach, how you doing today?
I'm doing good, Daniel. Just glad for the fact that we're going to be dancing here in about a week.
Oh, yes. We cannot wait. This will probably be released just leading up to the Wednesday start date. Bowling Green, antsy, right? Waiting. They haven't been to the tournament since 2012. It's their third ever trip. And what a season to finally put it all together for Coach Daniela Tomic. She had a 22-1 record. Bowling Green, a team that, through the middle of the year, you see an undefeated mark and you always scratch your head, right? Covering a team that is consistently putting up W's probably has you thinking, right? How good are we? So it's time for you to tell us, how good are the Falcons?
The Falcons are really good. And, you mentioned the start off to this season. It was the best start to program history, 18 straight wins, best win streak. And this team was really, really good. This team still is really, really good. I don't want to put that was in there as a sorts of means to say against it. This is a very, very talented team from top to bottom. We've got seniors, juniors, sophomores, freshmen. It's not just a top-heavy team. It's not a bottom-heavy team. We're really, really balanced. And as you mentioned, first time since 2012, Daniela Tomic has taken this team to the NCAA tournament. Last time we were in there, we actually did walk away with a victory. So it's really big for this city, or for the town of Bowling Green, I should say. But
Big
this
distinction, big distinction in the Midwest, right?
Big distinction, especially in Ohio. You got Toledo above us, Cincinnati, Columbus, Cleveland, but why not a team like Bowling Green to come out? And I feel Bowling Green's going to surprise a lot of people this coming this tournament.
So taking a look at the stats, not often do you have two players with over 300 kills. Petra Indrova is the only player on the team, Zach, that has played every single set, all 88. But Meyer just two sets shy of that number, and the two of them hitting over 240, Indrova at 280, Meyer at 248. What identity do the Falcons have? What kind of offense do they run? Is it a tempo style? How can they, maybe ask some questions to Wisconsin in the second round if they get past Weber State?
Well, you don't have two first team all MAC players and not be able to talk about them, right? Caitlin Meyer just winning the MVP for the Mid-American Conference tournament that just happened just a couple of days ago. Petra Indrova, great herself. And, we talk a lot about what Petra Indrova has meant to this team. I've talked about it quite a few times this year, especially with the fact that she was hurt a little bit last year. She suffered an injury, won't go into that. That was the past, but she had a great season last year in spite of that. And this year she ranked amongst the top in the MAC in so many of the offensive hitting percentage categories. And now she is going to get an opportunity to show everybody what it is she has. Her, Caitlin Meyer, and there's even players that you didn't even mention. Jacqueline Askin. Jacqueline Askin ranked second on the team in kills last year and started to really come into her own again this season. And from top to bottom, it's a very well balanced system, where Caitlin Meyer comes in as a role player, or she can come in and start. Like Petra Indrova can do the exact same thing. So when you have a team that has as many dynamic hitters as Bowling Green does, you really can space them out in multiple different phases. And the cool thing with Bowling Green is how balanced the bench is. And I already talked about the veteran and the freshman and everything in between. If one player is off their game, you can put in another player because of the fact every single one of these Falcon hitters is just so dangerous. And that's what I think is the biggest thing with this Falcon team.
So now time for the tough question here for you, Zach. Only one loss. It was Toledo. It was a 5-setter. It's easy to kind of throw that away. They only hit 200. But what are a few possible weaknesses that could lead to the downfall of Bowling Green here in the tournament?
Well, one thing that I've started to notice, especially later in the year, let me take a step backwards. When you look at undefeated teams, and the first one that pops into my head is the 11-0 Pittsburgh Steelers from this past NFL season. You start to watch how they go and you wonder how it is that we can stop them. And once you find that click, then everything starts to fall apart. For those Steelers, it was the lack of a run game. With Bowling Green, they were riding high, and the loss against Toledo was a precursor from the Akron series before that. Bowling Green is a very well-balanced team, offense and defense, but if you play under Coach Tomich, you're expected to play defense. Give hustle from the moment the ball is served to the moment the whistle is blown. And this Falcons team can do that. But it's the matter of once you start to get spaced out and you take away those line drive shots, every single Bowling Green hitter can fire those line drive shots into the back row, and even go off the block and out of play. There's so much velocity that comes off of players like Petra Androva and Caitlin Meyer, as we already mentioned. But the biggest one of the weaknesses that I can see coming out of it is if you can get up front and force the Falcons to, not shoot line drives, but more, lob type balls over, a lot of free balls. If you start going to that perspective and you control the tempo and get the Falcons to play from behind, that is not exactly something you would want to see.
Well, just a few days away from finding out, 7:00 Eastern time between Bowling Green and Weber State, a pair of one-loss teams for the rights to play the number 1 overall seed, the undefeated Badgers. Thank you so much for joining me, Zach.
Happy to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Cannot wait to watch the action that we're all speculating. He's Zach Smith, the voice of the Falcons. Time to head out to Utah and talk Weber State. Now let's talk about the other side of this first round matchup. Heading out to Oregon, talking Weber State. I'm joined by Austin Christensen, beat writer and analyst for the Weber State volleyball team. Austin, thank you for joining me.
I'm super happy to be here.
And you mentioned it right when we jumped on. The second that I started this call, Austin said, our first trip in my lifetime. It's the second all-time trip for Weber State volleyball, first since 1888. Walk me through this championship match, a revenge 4-set win over the Northern Colorado team that didn't let Weber State advance in 2019.
That's right. I mean, they were in the championship match, the Big Sky Conference championship match in 2019. It went to the 5th set. And I think that Northern Colorado won that 5th set 15-13. It was just a heartbreaker. And, the tides have really changed for this Weber State program. Jeremiah Larson was hired, the head coach was hired 6 years ago, and the program at the time was in shambles. And here we are now, Weber State. They've made back-to-back conference tournament championship appearances, and this time they won the conference tournament, beating Northern Colorado revenge style on Northern Colorado's home floor. And so it was pretty sweet for the Weber State women to go into Colorado and win that match. And like you said, get their first berth in the NCAA tournament since 1988. It's been a lot of fun.
And the ladies let nothing to doubt. They dropped the first set 26-24, but then they go 18, 17, and 17 to be crowned Big Sky champions. It was a little bit of a revenge kind of season, right? The only loss of the year coming to Northern Arizona, and they get the revenge in the semifinals against Northern Arizona. It's going to be a tough matchup, right? A pair of teams in Bowling Green State and Weber State that have only lost one time this season. Austin, what might you think could be, the X factor of this matchup?
X factor is that Weber State has a lot of experience and a lot of talent. There are 4 ladies in the starting 6 that all made the All Big Sky first team. The setter, Ashlyn Power, is the team's all-time leader in assists, and she's just absolutely crushed that record. Also, there's Rylan Adams, who plays left side. She also sees a decent amount of attacks coming out of the back row, and she was the Big Sky Conference MVP this year. She's been the X factor all season, and I would assume that that's going to continue here in April in the NCAA tournament. So I would look for the left side, Rylan Adams, to be a go-to lady in this match for the Wildcats.
Yeah, Adams with 316 kills, 884 swings. You're an analytical guy, right? You break down the matches. You're the former player, the analyst. Austin, walk me through what kind of style we might be able to expect from this Wildcats team. Are they up-tempo? Do they use a lot of size? What kind of game script are we looking for?
So Weber State doesn't actually use a ton of size. They run a 5-1. Ashlyn Power is the setter. She's going to be the setter for probably 95% of the match. She is just phenomenal. Her understanding of the offense is impeccable. Occasionally she'll go to the team's assistant coach, who is essentially the offensive coordinator for this team, and he'll try to point something out to her, and she already knows what's going on. And so he rarely points something out to her that she doesn't already know. What they do with the middle block, they don't attack up the middle so much. They'll use the middle block. Sam Sheese, who is another first team performer this season, she goes off the 1 foot a lot off the right side. She'll hit a lot of slide sets, and she hits a very high percentage from the right side, normally hitting from the right side. Sometimes she'll go up the middle, but usually when she hits, she goes off the right side. They use a lot of big high and outside sets. They have 2 really good left side hitters in Rylan Adams and Danny Ney, who is the 2019 Big Sky Conference Freshman of the Year. So it's not so much a lot of up tempo, but what they do use, they have a lot of athleticism, specifically on the left side with Adams and Ney, and that's really where this Weber State team has seen most of their success.
So this is the first sub-regional that you kind of look at in the bracket. It's the 1 and the 16. I like that they, the one advantage of a 48 team setup is Weber State, instead of maybe playing Wisconsin in the first round, they're giving themselves a chance to maybe get to the second round, get to play Wisconsin. But I'm going to be asking a lot of people about what might be the reason that we may see an upset here or there. But the one thing that stands out about your stats, about Weber State stats, 6 players with double-digit aces, and one of the few teams of the automatic qualifiers that have more aces than service errors. How important is the service game for this team?
They live and die at the service line. And the entire Big Sky Conference, well, most of the Big Sky Conference anyway, is known for being a very tough serving. It's a tough serving conference. Everybody's serving super aggressive, looking for the lines, putting a lot of pace on their serves. And Weber State this season, and last season really in 2019, has probably been the best serving team in the entire conference. Danny Ney specifically has just been serving lights out. Caroline Broadhead, who's Weber State's second middle blocker, she has been serving phenomenally as well. She's a redshirt freshman. And then Ashlyn Power is one of the school's all-time leaders in service aces. And so really all the way around the rotation, everybody's a threat to make a killer serve and really put the other team on their back foot and keep the setter off the net and get them out of system. So serving for this Weber State team is huge. Danny Ney, Caroline Broadhead, Ashlyn Power, those are the 3 names that Bowling Green fans are going to watch at the service line.
Very much looking forward to this one. 7:00 Eastern time, 4:00 out on the West Coast. I think 5:00 for you guys, right, in Utah?
That's correct. Yes.
Yep. So I'm looking forward to it. Cannot wait for it. Thank you so much for joining me, Austin.
Hey, I'm glad to do it. Thanks for having me on.
1988, the last time Weber State, and the only other time Weber State made the NCAA tournament. Who did they play? Nebraska, and they took them to 5. So what will be the encore for this young Wildcats team? He's Austin Christensen, the analyst and beat writer for Weber State. We're going to move on, stay in California, out on the West Coast. Rider against UCLA next. Headed to our second match of this Wisconsin sub-regional, and it's Rider, a 7-4 team, stunning by making it to the NCAA tournament. They will take on a powerhouse in UCLA, and I am joined now by Dylan Manfre, sports editor up at the Rider News. Dylan, thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on.
Absolutely. I mean, we got to hear from all of these minor schools because you never know who might make a run. It's the beauty of the tournament. And a team like Rider, you take a look, making their first NCAA tournament since 1996, the 4th trip ever for Rider, first time winning the MAAC. What kind of coaching job has Coach Jeff Rotundo really put together here this season? Only 11 matches played and 7 wins.
Yeah, I mean, and the crazy part is this is only his 2nd season at the helm at Rider. You know, he took a team that started out the year 1-4 and then rattled off 7 straight wins. So you got to give them a lot of credit. Coach Jeff Rotundo's an incredibly analytical coach. You know, in speaking to him over the course of this tournament, he told me that he was staying up till 1, sometimes 2 in the morning, you know, studying film with associate coach Susan Kim. And they're just they're so analytical. They're so intertwined with every little detail. I asked him the following day how late he actually stayed up, and it was more like 12:30, but that's still pretty late, honestly, to do your scout. But that was for Siena, a team who they never played before in the regular season. I believe that was either due to COVID issues or they just didn't have them on the schedule. But Jeff Rotundo is an incredibly analytical coach, and he's done a phenomenal job with the Rider Broncs, especially in the toughest of seasons.
Yeah, it was a tough start for Rider. They have won 6 straight. It was a 1-4 start to the season, swept by Fairfield to start, and then split with Marist and split with Canisius. They got the revenge against Canisius in the conference tournament, and you were able to follow the team through the MAAC championships. What do you think really puts everything together? What are some of the strengths of this team?
I think a lot of their pieces started to come together and gel as a whole unit. You really saw a lot of depth with Jillian Chan stepping up in that MAC final. You saw Morgan Romano being the type of player that we became accustomed to seeing last year. She rattled off every MAC Rookie of the Week award and was the unanimous Rookie of the Year. So I think we saw a little bit more of that version of her in the MAC tournament. You also saw Annalise Scher, showing why she's one of the best setters in the nation. I think you said it before, 6th or 7th in the nation in assists per set, averaging just over 11.5 per game. And Rider really, like I said, flexed its depth. You have Allie Ward, and even in, I think it was that Siena game. It was either the Siena game or the MAC final. I'm literally drawing a blank, but Rider ran out of subs, so they had to have their shortest players in Pamela Lowe and Alyssa Iafredi in that front line. I think they're like 5'3", 5'7", respectively. I'm 5'6", so
it's always madness when the subs run out.
Exactly. But they handled that so well. Those players, Coach Rotundo told me, like, they can hit. They might not get you a lot off the block, but if they're up there, they can still hit the ball. But then you had Cher and Romano back in the back line serving the ball, and you just wanted to make sure that they got it to the right players on Canisius' side so that Pamela Lowe and Alyssa Iafredi didn't necessarily have to exert that much energy because you are at a deficit, a height deficit in that front line in that situation.
Yeah, that championship match, a dandy. Taking a look at the box score there, right? Second set went extra points, winning it for Rider 29-27, taking a 2-0 lead. And then the fourth set, again, extra points. And you mentioned Cher, 7th in the nation in assists per set, had 58 dishes in that championship match. Talk to me about what needs to happen, right? Last thing here, what kind of dominoes need to fall in place here? What needs to go Rider's way? Is there one certain avenue that they seem to really run off and succeed in? Because you need to have a lot of things go your way to beat a talented and lengthy team in UCLA.
I think they need to have a lot more success in their middle attack with Allie Ward and Morgan Cook. That really is what propelled them against Siena. It's really what flexed their resiliency against Canisius when they went into those 2 or 3 deuces, I think in set 2 and set 4, as you mentioned. And really against Siena, that's what led them. You already know you have a stronghold in Morgan Cook and Annalise Scher. You got Allie Ward, and you can have players like Jillian Chan and Danielle Blanco step up when you need them to. But I really think if they key in that middle set with Ward and Morgan Cook, I think they're going to be just fine. I think they're going to be like you said earlier, UCLA is an incredible powerhouse. But I really, really, really do think if they run their offense through the middle and Morgan Cook and Allie Ward can do what they did against Siena, I think they're going to be just fine. I mean, Morgan Cook against Siena probably had her best game of the tournament and the entire season. She had 11 kills on 19 attempts. That's really good. I forget what her hit percentage was in that game, but I know it was above 400, I believe. So I think if you run it through the two of them, I think Rider will be very competitive. Maybe UCLA beats them in 4 sets. Maybe they even take them to 5. But who knows? This is the MAC. This is the NCAA tournament.
It's April madness, absolutely, Dylan. And I think the biggest challenge might just be in all of these players' first ever NCAA tournament. waiting around until 10:30 p.m. Eastern time for that start. I can only imagine as a broadcaster when I have a night game, just sitting and waiting and UCLA, they're playing their local time around 7:30, so they might be used to playing a little bit later. But the winner will get BYU at 10:30 p.m. on that Thursday, April 15th. Will be a tough draw nonetheless for this Rider team. Dylan, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much. I just want to add one more point. Don't underestimate any mid-major. The mid-major conferences, the mid-major teams, they'll always surprise you. They will find a way. They always do.
No doubt about it. I'm looking forward to it. He's Dylan Manfre, the sports editor of Rider News. Wrapping up this first round episode from the Wisconsin subregion, let's jump across the country, talk UCLA volleyball with the beat writer for UCLA volleyball, Bryan Palmero. He works for the Daily Bruin Sports. Bryan, how you doing today?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
No doubt. It's a lot of fun. It's always great to have some of these matchups too. UCLA Rider, it feels like it could be lopsided, but with this UCLA team, you kind of never know, right? The season's been a roller coaster.
Yeah, definitely. During the season, looking at our schedule and looking at our past few games, it's definitely been indicative of a hot and cold season. I think it's really because of the fans. If fans haven't been allowed at Pauley Pavilion, our home stadium, along with the stadiums of all the other Pac-12 teams, because of that, the atmosphere at the games has definitely taken a hit. Even without the stress of like thousands of eyes upon you, there have been times when teams have struggled to find energy and momentum throughout the games and the season, UCLA included.
You know what? You're the first reporter that has brought that up, and that's a great point. So maybe UCLA Nation watching, get your behind over to Omaha for these matches. It's going to be the Bruins' 36th appearance in the NCAA tournament. They've made 4 Sweet 16s and 1 Elite 8 since winning the title in 2011. This year, Bryan, it seems like it revolves around Mac May. When you watch the team play, is that the idea that you're getting, or is there a lot more depth than what meets the eye?
Well, definitely. Coming off our loss to Wisconsin in the 2019 tournament, we've had a lot of seniors leave, and it's been on Coach Michael Seeley to help supplant that with his 8 new players in last year's recruiting class. So I wouldn't say it's only Mac May. We've got a couple freshmen, a couple transfers that are willing to step up to the plate whenever Mac May isn't there. If you just take a look at our junior transfers, we have libero / defensive specialist Zoe Fleck coming down from UC Santa Barbara, and former Horned Frog Alon McCall joining the program. Fleck has been pivotal to UCLA's success, and I think a lot of people believe that her addition would be game-changing this season. And just looking at how the season has played out, there's no question about that. She took home Pac-12 Libero of the Year honors just earlier this week, and she leads the conference in digs per set.
Only the second Bruin to pick up that award too. Go ahead.
Definitely, like Taylor Formico, a couple of years back, got back-to-back Libero of the Year honors, and I think Zoe Fleck has a chance to do that again next year.
So now walk me through what the biggest weakness might be with this team, right? If there's one thing that could stop them from getting to BYU, and honestly, I could see this being a great BYU UCLA match, but what is one thing that they really need to avoid to struggle with?
I think, as I've mentioned before, momentum is really all that determines the game. If we look at our season, we've picked up a lot of losses in the second half. And usually you see that type of struggle downhill in the season due to COVID-19 protocols. We saw that with Utah and even Stanford this season, a team that went back-to-back the previous 2 seasons, and this year just couldn't find their footing, in part due to a loss of a couple seniors, but also because of COVID-19 protocols. I think that if UCLA wants to make a big run throughout this tournament, they're going to have to find their momentum, muster the energy to be consistent throughout games. And what could quell the spell for this Bruin team would be tough serving. If UCLA can force its opponents to hit out of system, starting with the first service received constantly, the momentum obviously shifts down to them. I think near the end of the season, we saw Coach Michael Seeley tinker with the lineup inserting libero Kelsey Campo at the end of a few sets to pinch serve and throw the other team out of rhythm.
Great point. Yeah, it's going to be a 10:30 start, so avoiding that 9 a.m. Pacific time start that a few other West Coast teams are going to have, like Pepperdine and San Diego. Rider versus UCLA for the right to play BYU. Thank you so much for joining me, Bryan.
Thank you, Daniel.
He's Bryan Palmero, the UCLA volleyball beat writer for Daily Bruin Sports, and that'll wrap up our first episode breaking down the first round matches. We're going to keep on chugging along, so stay tuned.